Hi everyone, I'm Glenn Deason, and today I'm joined by Ray McGovern, CIA intelligence analyst for 27 years, and also former chair of the National Intelligence Estimates, who prepared the daily briefs for the president. It's good to see you again, Ray. It's been a while.
Thanks, man.
Um, well, I want to ask you about Trump and the deep state because Trump, he obviously wants a radical shift in US foreign policy. Exactly what he wants to do, I think there's still some dispute around this, but at least he wants great changes, and it's difficult to make such huge changes. And I guess it's no big secret that there is a permanent bureaucracy, a blob, a deep state which is usually the reference to the structure or financing or just networks that more or less prevents change, the kind of change Trump is looking for. I just wanted to ask a bit about how you see him attempting to uproot the deep state as it was, especially this with the NGOs. I find this to be quite fascinating. Suspending the aid for 90 days for reviews, and not just the NGOs, which happens to be again non-governmental organizations financed by the states and often aligned closely with the intelligence communities, but a lot of focus have been especially given to US aid, and some see this as an attack on altruistic aid organization. Others see this, the USAID as an institution for the intelligence community to hijack the civil society of other states. I was wondering how you're reading this situation with USAID and the other aid which is being cut.
Well, Glenn, you always ask good questions. Let me see if I can address some of them. The deep state, well, that's no secret to anyone anymore. There was a time, maybe about 15 years ago, where even my former colleagues at the CIA would say, "Deep state, you believe that stuff, Ray?" My God. So there is a natural resistance from people who think they're in the know and then realize they've been part of it for so many years. Let me start with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, your old friend, who you have met several times in Moscow. Um, he put it this way. He said, I've dealt with three presidents of the United States, and they all come into office and they say good things about wanting to have decent relationships. And then all of a sudden, into the room come these men with briefcases and dark glasses and dark suits, just like I'm wearing, says Vladimir Putin. And they tell him which end is up, and then everything changed. So it's really hard to believe when a new president comes in that he or she might be able to do anything different. Well, there you have it. I mean, we don't need Putin to tell us that. But the interesting thing is that he realizes that. And so he's shadowboxing with presidents because they really are encumbered by what they see as uh, their encumbrances given to them by the deep state with respect to military spending, with respect to overthrowing other governments, all kinds of other things. And when you mention USAID, well, it's really simple for people to understand what they've been involved in and how their budget has gone up from, I think it was 17 billion to now 41 billion last year. Well, there needs to be some funnel uh, to fund um, NGOs and other outfits that are trying to enhance Ukraine's, for example, aspirations to join the West. Okay. Now, way back in 2013, 2014, when the coup happened in Kiev, Bob Perry, my mentor in journalism, uncovered the fact that there were no fewer than 53 NGOs, so non-governmental organizations, very active in Ukraine. Okay. Now, what were they doing? Well, they were, according to Victoria Nuland, the Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs at the time, they were helping to satisfy Ukraine's aspirations to join the West to the tune of 5 billion. Would it be? $1 billion. So it was funding these folks, which some of which overthrew the government in February 2014, just 3 months later. And so you need a way to fund these things. And, the National Endowment for Democracy, which very clearly was the successor to CIA's covert action staff, the ones that fund these kinds of things, the ones that overthrow governments and so forth. Well, since the CIA wasn't funding these things in a covert manner, you need some sort of vehicle to get this money to these people, and that was USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, of course. Now, it was conceived in actually very nice terms. It was to help emerging countries actually have the resources they need from a very rich country like ourselves to help them develop. And it started very modestly and very important. It was part of the Department of State, which it should be, and which I think it's gravitating back to becoming part again of this. In other words, there shouldn't be a separate agency funding and supplying and promoting things that really are the province of the Department of State. So, getting down to brass tacks, what do we find out about USAID that has now been shut off? Oh, my goodness. The mainstream newspapers in Ukraine, all of them, are up in arms because they can't pay their people, their publishers and their writers. Well, why can't they pay them? Oh, because they got all that money from USAID. Okay, so when you think about the independent press or media in Kiev, come on, you're talking about a media that's totally funded by USAID. So, well, that's kind of transparent now, isn't it? Because the funding has stopped and now they're complaining. Oh, what do you do? What do you do? Okay. What else? Oh, well, some of the people now who have been looking at actually USAID websites uncover things like this. Georgia. Now, I don't mean the state of Georgia in the U.S. No, I mean the country of Georgia, way out there on the Black Sea. Used to be part of the Soviet Union. Now it's an independent country, but it has aspirations to join the West, just like Ukraine had, right? And it's subjected to a color revolution, just like Ukraine had, okay, just like Syria had. So, what do we see on the USAID website? Well, there's a grant here, $26,490,000 to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening in the country of Georgia. Whoa, 26 million, huh? How's this funded? Through the Agency for International Development. Whoa. Description of this project: Georgia elections and political processes activity. So there you have it, $26 million plus. Now, unfortunately for USAID, they didn't make it last time. In other words, most of the people in power there in Georgia are still resisting this kind of thing. And when they resist this kind of thing, what are they called? Oh, they're pro-Russian. They're pro-Russian. Well, give me a break. There's something between succumbing to this kind of influence and being pro-Russian, that is being pro-independent. And to their credit, the people in Georgia who are really in power so far have been able to stave off all this $26 million worth of encouragement for Georgia to join the West. You know, look where Georgia is on the map, huh? Are they going to be part of NATO? This is pretty far from the North Atlantic, I would submit. So it's all very, very fishy, all very malunderstood by normal American citizens, because even though when the Ukrainian press complains so loudly that we can't function anymore because we're not being paid by the United States, people still don't get it. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, that means you've been fed a story, sourced to Ukrainian sources, paid by the United States, comes back to the United States, and informs not only public opinion, but I dare say, and this is a shocker, the intelligence assessments. I'll just finish with this, Glenn. In early July 2023, so a year and a half ago, the head of Central Intelligence Agency, William Burns, said the Russian army and Putin have already lost in Ukraine. The Russian army has shown to be ineffectual for all the world to see. Now, he said that on the 2nd of July, if memory serves. Less than 2 weeks later, President Biden got up. He happened to be in Helsinki, and he said, not to worry, Putin has already lost in Ukraine. Early July 2013. Where was he getting that information? Well, you know what I uncovered? I found out that Bill Burns, CIA director, when he said those remarks, had just been in Kiev. And he talked to not only the media there, but he talked to Zelensky and other people. It was not a secret trip, 10 days before he said this remark. So obviously, Zelensky told him, not to worry, Mr. Director of the CIA. We got this in hand. The Russia's already lost. So tell that to your president. Bill Binney? I mean, Bill Bill Burns goes to the president and says, hey, Zelensky says, good news, President, the Russia's already lost. And the president said, oh, that is good news. Now he proclaims it publicly a year and a half ago. Not only that, one less little factoid here has to do with the intelligence, which is what I feel most close to. The head of national intelligence up until Trump won was a woman named Avril Haines. Her reputation was she's a clever lawyer. Uh, she worked for John Brennan, and then when John Brennan's folks got in trouble for hacking into the Senate intelligence community computers, a violation of constitutional rights, if there ever was one. Well, then she moved to the National Security Council and oversaw an investigation of these people who hacked into the Senate computers on behalf of John Brennan and found them not guilty, just made a mistake. Just it's okay. So that's how insidious all this stuff. So Avril Haines comes in and she becomes the National Director of Intelligence for Biden. And what does she say? Now, I was talking about July 2023. What Hayden said, Avril Haines, the Director of National Intelligence, what she said in December of 2022 was this. Don't worry, Mr. President. She said this publicly. Don't worry, American people. We got this in hand. Russia is running out of ammunition. And worse still for them, they have no indigenous capability of producing the ammunition that they're losing willy-nilly at the hands of those brave Ukrainian forces. So don't worry, we got it knocked. Russians are running out of ammunition. Now, I don't know where she got that. But maybe she got that from Zelensky as well. If Bill Burns got that from Zelensky in June, right before he told the president in July, well, maybe she heard Zelensky say that in December of the previous year. That's what has become of the intelligence community. Right now, today, you may not know this, but just within the last hour, Tulsi Gabbard, her nomination has been sent forward to the full Senate on a straight partisan 9-8 vote. And it looks like if all works out well for her, she will be confirmed as the new Director of National Intelligence. You won't hear Tulsi Gabbard quoting Zelensky. I can assure you of that.
It is, well, just quickly on this NGOs, what is quite remarkable is it's still treated as if it would be a controversial statement to point out how closely they are aligned with the intelligence agencies. But in the 80s, there were plenty of not just whistleblowers and documents being released, which show that, yeah, that there's no daylight between the two. But but even the media was quite open about it as well, especially in the 90s when they very openly said, well, National Endowment for Democracy and these NGOs now do what the CIA had to do covertly, so they have the benefit of hiding in plain sight. And of course, you're very correct about the role of these NGOs with the Ukraine in 2014, but even a decade before, the Rose Revolution in Georgia 2003 and the Orange Revolution in Ukraine 2004. People forget at that time these democratic revolutions, which we had to celebrate, compulsory to celebrate them. At the time, you had James Woolsey, former CIA director, who was leading Freedom House, which was one of the NGOs, and now he's also on the board of National Endowment for Democracy. Now on the board of National Endowment for Democracy, you also have Victoria Nuland. So there's no shame anymore. No one's really hiding it either. And again, it's all been done very much, yeah, in the open. Yet I have to say, because I'm doing some I'm well starting on a book on these NGOs, and this is really a watershed moment because once the tap was turned off, and as you pointed out, suddenly 90% or more of the Ukrainian media suddenly lost their financing, so they've just been printing what they've been told, and this was the independent media. So it's no, it's quite shocking, and this is also a common phenomenon, isn't it? That the intelligence agencies put out disinformation, it goes through the media cycle, and then they consume their own propaganda. Is in your days in the CIA, is this something you saw happen, not just to the United States, but other intelligence agencies of other countries?
Well, let me first talk about my last years on active duty, so to speak, in the intelligence community. Uh, my boss was a fellow named William Casey. He was the director of the CIA at the time. And by some fluke, I got the job of briefing Ronald Reagan's chief advisors, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Assistant for National Security Affairs, Vice President, and later we added the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What wonderful duty it was. One on one, early in the morning. Uh, no strings attached to what I would say as an experienced CIA analyst, okay? Could I answer questions? If I knew the answer, yes, I could. If I didn't know the answer, I would get the answer immediately for those who did know the answer. So what we had there was a situation where I saw Bill Casey every other morning. We worked in a team of two. So every other morning I would do this downtown first in the morning duty. And then we'd come back at 11:30. Casey would want to ask us, what these principal policymakers, co-members of the cabinet, for God's sake. He was a member of the cabinet. Big mistake. Anyway, you want to know how it went, right? So, for example, he would say, "So," and I would say, Excuse me, Mr. Casey, could you speak more slowly? And my immediate superiors would wet their pants. You don't say that to Mr. Casey, for God's sake. No, no. Anyhow, I was sort of disruptive because if he didn't say something intelligible, he was famous for this. I mean, people said he didn't need any machine to muffle his voice. So I'd say, Mr. Casey, please, and then he'd explain it. Okay, so during his tenure, his covert action activities became so transparent in Central America, in Angola, wherever there was an opportunity to play World War II covert action type. He apparently was really good during World War II, but that mentality never left him. Okay. So it became so transparent that people say, hey, we shouldn't be doing this stuff. And so what they decided to do was create the National Endowment for Democracy. Oh, that sounds good, doesn't it? Well, it was so transparent. The covert action staff at the CIA, the money they had was given to the National Endowment for Democracy and, of course, USAID, okay? Some of the people. I was still a recent retiree, so I knew some of the people. They also went to work for the National Endowment for Democracy. So it was very transparent, but the National Endowment for Democracy could not be given $47 billion, right? So you had to funnel that somewhere else. And that's how they funnel that through USAID, which God knows what's going to happen to them now. Now, you asked another, oh yeah, I was going to talk about how this disinformation operation works. And a recent case in point is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, it's the height of irony that they were accusing Tulsi Gabbard, who is the nominee to become Director of National Intelligence, they were accusing her of being soft not only on Putin, but on Bashar al-Assad. Now, as как известно, right? As everybody knows, Bashar al-Assad mounted sarin attacks from Syria, kill all manner of people, and we have the goods on him. Did he do that? No, he didn't. Why was Tulsi Gabbard accused of that? God knows. Maybe these senators just don't know which end is up. But the supreme irony came where she was being accused of cavorting with Bashar al-Assad because before she went to Syria, I think it was 2017, she had the presence of mind to listen not only to the intelligence people who all said, oh yeah, sure, sure, was Bashar al-Assad did this sarin attack outside of Damascus on August 21, 2013. That was Bashar al-Assad. John Kerry, Secretary of State, said that 35 times in testimony, or in a big briefing he gave. One would have thought that he would be remembering Shakespeare's dictum about accentuating the positive or protesting too much. anyhow, anyhow, it was really interesting because she had the presence of mind to seek other views. Now, she knew that a professor from MIT, his name is Ted Postel, you no doubt know him, Glenn, professor in physics, taught not only at MIT, but at Stanford and California, other places, been around, highly respectable. Matter of fact, he worked for the chief of naval operations as his senior advisor on technical affairs. And this is worth mentioning. When Reagan got it into his head to do an ICBM that he called the Peacekeeper, okay, that was promoted by Reagan and the Defense Department. And Ted Postel, advising the chief of naval operation, looked at the physics, looked at how it was constructed, and told his boss, Admiral, this is not only not going to work, it's going to destroy a lot of people right here. And he said, what? Look, it's physics, right? The principles of physics, they don't change. I looked at this thing closely. Why don't you check it out? So he sends it to the Defense Intelligence Agency. And they spend a month and they say, my God, Postal's right. We better tell the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And so they did. Now, three of the five Joint Chiefs of Staff voted against appropriating money for this ICBM. First time ever, only time ever, in my knowledge. That was because Ted Postal did the math, did the physics, okay, and persuaded those in the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, that he was right. They advised the Joint Chiefs of Staff that missile was canceled. Not only did it not work, it was a danger to the people who fired it, the people who might be on the receiving end of it here. So here that's the book on Ted Postal. So what happens? Well, Ted Postal is consulted by Tulsi Gabbard before he goes to talk to Bashar al-Assad. And so she has not only what the intelligence community has been telling her, but she has this independent view that, well, what they're saying might not be quite right. So she's accused by the Senate Intelligence Committee members of buying what Bashar al-Assad said rather than what the U.S. intelligence community said. Well, that's so wrong on so many counts. I think it's worth recounting. It won't take very long. This happened on August 21st, 2013. Okay. Immediately, 2 days later, John Kerry got up and said, as I say 35 times, Bashar al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad did this. Okay. The evidence was very, very scant. We watched it really closely and we found out through a contact in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, one of our senior veteran intelligence professionals for sanity was very well plugged in there. He found out that the British had a sample of the sarin gas that was used outside Damascus, and it was not the same sarin gas that was known to be in Syria's arsenal. Okay, it was manufactured, it was put together somewhere else. Now, the head of British, the counterpart of General Dempsey as head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told the British Parliament this. And the British Parliament, for the first time in 17,000 years, voted against the war. I exaggerate 17, maybe not 17, but they voted against doing war with Syria, okay? So Obama knew all this because Dempsey told him, okay? Not only that, but later, after this all went down, Obama is giving extensive interviews for this fellow Jeffrey Goldberg from the Atlantic magazine, no liberal, he. So Obama says, Jeff, I'm really proud of not making another war. We had enough wars. I didn't want to make war on Syria. All, all my advisors said I had to do it because they had violated a red line using chemical weapons. I didn't want to do it. Okay. Now, not only did I hear from the British, but it was very curious during this same period, during the last week of 2013, I was treated to an unexpected, uninvited visit by then National Intelligence Director James Clapper. He just kind of barged in during one of my normal briefings. And he stayed and he asked, could everyone please leave the room? I have something to tell the president. And what he said to President Obama was, now, President Obama, you probably were wondering why we wouldn't do an intelligence assessment on that sarin attack outside Damascus on August 21. Well, yeah, I was wondering that. Well, we wouldn't do it because the evidence is really, really suspect, As a matter of fact, your political people put out a government assessment masquerading as an intelligence assessment, but we didn't prove that. We didn't buy that. And my people will be up in arms if that's described as an intelligence assessment. Suffice it to say, Mr. President, and this is directly from Obama's mouth to Jeffrey Goldberg. Suffice it to say, says Clapper, well, the business about Syria being responsible for this sarin gas attack is not a slam dunk. Okay, you got that, Mr. President? It's not a slam dunk. Now, for younger viewers here, slam dunk, of course, is in basketball. You know what that is, but it was a term used by the totally corrupt CIA director George Tenet in December 21st, 2002, when he and his compadre John McLaughlin were briefing Bush, and Cheney. And the briefing went pretty badly because the WMD proof was seen even by Bush and by Cheney to be pretty elusive, right? And so Cheney says, "Is that all you got?" And Tenet jumps off the couch and he says, "Mr. President, the and Mr. Vice President, the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq is a slam dunk. Got it? A slam dunk." Now, how do I know that? Because Condoleezza Rice told the New York Times that that's how it went down. Okay, so she's interested in absolving herself of the guilt of all this stuff, but it is fact, according to Condoleezza Rice, that these two clowns at the top of the CIA told President Bush and Vice President Cheney that the presence of WMD in Iraq was a slam dunk. So fast forward now to 2013. Okay, I'm sorry, what we got? Well, when the sarin gas went down, 2013 in August. Here is the Clapper of James Clapper, National Intelligence Director, coming into the White House uninvited and saying, "Mr. President, look, I know John Kerry has said 35 times that Bashar al-Assad is responsible for that. We don't see that evidence. Just be aware, I don't know how to say this other than by saying it's not a slam dunk." Now, I'm not making that up. That's what Obama told his unofficial biographer, Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, right? The last year before he left for the Western Sunset, and he wanted to just appear to be master of his own fate. And to his credit, he claimed accurately that he faced down all of his advisors, okay? And he didn't say this to Goldberg, but I know that was partly because the British had said that wasn't Syrian army stacks of sarin, and also because he knew that Clapper had snuck in and said, "Not a slam dunk, Mr. President." So Obama made the right choice. Why is it so relevant now? Because the Senate Intelligence Committee people are accusing Gabbard of disputing what what the consensus was in the government, not in the intelligence agencies, but in the government. And so they got it completely wrong. And it's the height of irony that they were using this against Tulsi Gabbard, faulting her for seeking independent advice from Ted Postal, getting it, and not being swayed one way or another to believe in a knee-jerk way what the current occupants of the intelligence community were telling her. I'm just interested now to see whether she will be confirmed by the entire Senate. The prospects are good now that she's passed muster with the Senate Intelligence Committee because she could make a difference. In other words, I briefed her once when she was a member of the House. She's smart as can be. She asks the right questions. And, I think she has a degree of inner strength, moral fiber, if you will, on some issues, not sadly on Southwest Asia. But that would suffice it, you know. Half a loaf is better than none. She's really good on Ukraine. She knows which end is up, and she knows to question the intelligence analysts that think they're currying favor by telling a president what he or she wants to hear.
Yeah, I find the efforts to present her as a stooge of a of Assad to be quite yeah absurd, but I think she could also have a very important role. Now I don't have a window into Trump's head, but I would think that he's must be a bit concerned about the intelligence community operating a bit too independently, perhaps. If we go back to again the election 2016, he was Russiagate, of course, had a huge component of the intelligence community who conspired against him. And then the next election in 2020, we had the Hunter Biden laptop where the 50 former intelligence officials intervened in the election, resulting in complete censorship of the story to yeah, protect Biden and yeah, go after Trump. Um, so yeah, to put Tulsi Gabbard in this position as a national intelligence chief, sorry, this would be quite extraordinary. Keep in mind that when she criticized was it Kamala Harris, they put her on a no-fly list, was it? And you know she even dared to speak positively about Assange. That is not you know not wanting to have him rot in a jail. So it is a very different person. It could really yeah restore some of the moral fiber of the intelligence community because countries do need intelligence communities. It's just it seems like they have gone a little bit off the rails in terms of the interference into the political system, and I think in this context be also an instrument of the yeah, deep state or blob in terms of preventing any significant change. But do you see her having to what extent do you see her being able to make any huge changes, or is it the same as you started off with Putin? One, you know, the that story. Once she gets into office, she would have to, you know, adjust as well. Because so far, she seemed to have her principles she stands on, even if she's confronted. Well, most of them, she seems to stand by.
Yeah, she stood firm on Edward Snowden, refusing to call him a traitor. I mean, she could have bent and said, "Oh, all right, he's a traitor. If you say he's a traitor, he's a traitor." So she has some moral fiber. The question is, who are the men with the briefcases, the dark glasses, and the fancy suits like you have on there, Glenn, but not that I have on. Okay. And ties. They have ties. Okay. No. They may be Trump people now. Now, is that better? I hold no brief for Trump. But I have to say that having seen what happened when the Democrats were conniving to prevent Trump from being elected in the first place, and then from working out a decent relationship with the Russians on second place, I mean, it can't be any worse. I mean, why was it that the head of the FBI, James Comey, the head of the CIA, John Brennan, why did they think they could do all those illegal things? It's just been revealed that John Brennan named 26 of Trump's team to be collected information on by the Five Eyes, the four other eyes, I should say, because, you know, we're not supposed to be collecting information on our own in our own country or our own citizens. So let the British or the Australians or the New Zealanders or the Canadians do it. I mean, my God. So why did these guys think they could get away with that? Well, the answer is simple. James Comey wrote a book. Sometimes they write books, and sometimes they're not real careful about what they say. So he writes in his book two years after he was cashiered. He said, "You know, this is a quote. Okay, I was operating in an environment in which I was sure that Hillary Rodham Clinton would be the next president of the United States. Period." End quote. Well, now, Glenn, if you're operating in that kind of environment, you're going to do Well, you can to help her do that, become president, and then you're not going to be prosecuted. You're going to be, you might become attorney general, or something. Give me a break. So, so it was a big surprise to everyone that Trump won, and this didn't stop them. They investigated the hell out of him, as you know. And one of the things that speaks for Trump reining them in is that he personally was the object of their tender ministrations, if you will, their their surveillance, their electronic stuff, and all that kind of stuff. So if he puts the right people in, now Tulsi Gabbard, I would dare to say, is far better than Avril Haines, and that, if anything, is damning with very faint praise. Okay. Now, how about Comey or this guy? What's his name? Ray, Christopher Ray, right? My God, they're all crooks. Christopher Ray lied to the courts in saying that the FBI had no information in its computers about Seth Rich. I won't go into detail about Seth Rich, simply to say that he was a young member of the Democratic National Committee staff who had access to all these emails and all these kinds of things. And he was murdered on the 10th of July, 2016. And people thought that maybe he had something to do with leaking those very damaging to Hillary Clinton emails, which showed that she had pretty much stolen, she and the DNC itself, Democratic National Committee, had stolen the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Okay. That was released by WikiLeaks. So they blamed WikiLeaks. And the big question was, where did WikiLeaks get this information? Then they thought, oh, this would be good. Let's say it was the Russians, with whom, of course, well, Trump is in the Russians' pocket, right? So we'll say it was the Russians. They hacked the information, gave it to WikiLeaks so that Hillary Clinton would lose. And that's what happened. Hey, guess what? That's not what happened, okay? What happened was, and let's just leave Seth Rich aside for a second, the so-called hack of the Democratic National Committee emails was not a hack. How do we know that? CrowdStrike, the cyber firm that James Comey, head of the FBI, in his wisdom, appointed to look into, to do the forensics on the DNC computers and servers, had to testify under oath on the 5th of December, 2017, as to how the Russians, he was asked by Adam Schiff, the head of the committee, how did the Russians get that information? How did they hack those DNC computers? And he started to say, well, and his counsel grabbed him aside. And then Sean Henry is the fellow's name, head of CrowdStrike. He said, well, uh, Congressman, there's no technical evidence that the Russians hacked into those DNC computers. Actually, there's no technical evidence that anyone hacked into those DNC computers. Oh, he's the guy that was given the job to do the forensics. What happened? This is an interesting story. As I said, that was the 5th of December, 2017. Okay. Adam Schiff, who then became the head of the intelligence community in the House, kept that at the bottom of his safe, even though it was unclassified, for 2.5 years. Finally, when this fellow Radcliffe, who is now head of CIA, was working with Trump to work on the intelligence community business, he told Trump, look, you can get that testimony released if you want it. I mean, you're president. And Trump said, yeah? Yeah, yeah. So all you have to do is tell Adam Schiff that if he doesn't release that information, 2 years old, but better than never, late, that you'll do it. Well, Trump says, that's a good idea. So let's call him and tell them that. And they did. And guess what Adam Schiff did the next day? He released the information. When was that? Oh, that was 2020. To be precise, May the 7th. Oh, isn't that interesting? How did they release it? They released it with about 53 other inconsequential documents, but the press missed it. So the norm, most Americans, I would say about 85%, are completely unaware that this business about Russian hacking of the DNC computers is bogus to begin with. I hate to use bogus because that's what Trump used, and I hold no brief for Trump, but it was. So people don't know that kind of thing. So that's how bad it is. And what else should I draw from this? Well, it's just that now we got a new head of the CIA. Who was that? This guy, John Ratcliffe, that I just mentioned, was releasing these other things and other damaging information, showing, for example, that Brennan was recruiting the other four eyes to dig up dirt on Trump during the campaign. I mean, hello. So there's going to be an accounting here. And the question that you ask, sorry for the long-winded answer, but it is complicated, is whether there are new men that come in with their briefcases and their dark glasses and in their suits working for Trump. And if there are, and I wager there will be, whether they'll be able to change the system, whether they'll have the power to say, all right, look, you're fired. Now, Trump is really good about saying you're fired, right? Okay. Whether these guys will be able to do that, or whether they'll be sabotaged at every turn, just as Trump himself was sabotaged during his first term during those 4 years. And lastly, I just to remind people that when Trump came in, there were two things that happened. He was elected, of course, in November of 2016. In December, we, veteran intelligence professionals for sanity, put out a memorandum. The date was December 12, 2016. And we looked at all these reports from Obama and everyone else that the Russians had hacked into the DNC computers. Now, we had two former technical directors of the National Security Agency, the code breaking and the scooping up of electronic signals for our government, Bill Binney and Ed Loomis. We also had a senior analyst. They all joined Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity because they saw that we were trying to get at the truth. So what happens? Well, what happened was that lost my little train of thought here. We're talking about okay, so these people come forward and say, well, no, oh yeah, okay, it's December 12th memorandum. They say, look, not only do we know how this works in terms of intercepting or hacking people, but we have these slides, and we put them in the memo. It's on consortiumnews.com. We put the slides. Who from? From Edward Snowden. Bona fide slides, top secret code word and all that kind of stuff. You could do it now because Snowden had taken them with him to Hong Kong, right? So we put them in the memo and we said, look, if there was a hack, we would know about it, or the other four eyes would know about it. We know how the circuit works. We, Bill Binney and Loomis, helped to create these circuits. We know how it works, and we can tell you that it was not a hack. It was some kind of a, well, you know what a thumb drive is. You put it in a computer and you copy. And there is no signature on the internet or any other electronic way. You just copy it from the computer, you put it in your pocket, and you carry it over to wherever WikiLeaks released it. Now, so the last word on that is, oh my God, who had access to that very sensitive information on Hillary Clinton and who had motive to give that for publication by whomever, WikiLeaks or whatever? Well, there was one fellow, there's only one suspect, and you're not allowed to say his name without being accused of being a conspiracy theorist. His name is Seth Rich. He was murdered July 10th, I think it was, 2016, after, right after Julian Assange said publicly that he had emails relating to Hillary Clinton and he was going to publish those emails. He said that exactly a month before Seth Rich was murdered. Now, he's the only suspect, but so far, you'll not be able to mention his name. Will you be able to mention his name now? Well, let's get back to the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray. 3 years ago, he told a court of law, we don't have any information in the FBI about Seth Rich. And then somebody ratted on him, or somehow the judge found out, oh, they do. And then he said, oh, I'm sorry, we have tens of thousands of records on Seth Rich. We can't possibly meet the requirements of this plaintiff, blah, blah, blah. And the judge said, do it anyway. Now, why do I mention that? It's coming to a head. Okay. The judge gave them until February the 7th this year to come up with these documents that Christopher Wray lied about not having and then has dragged his feet for 3 years. Okay. February 7th. The FBI just asked for a delay. Can we delay? We were just thinking of that one. And it looks like it'll be March 7th. But if Kash Patel is in charge of the FBI and not Christopher Wray, okay, then this could be hell to pay because this judge seems to think the law is important. And he's very kind of ticked off, I would say, with the way the FBI first lied. This stuff under oath, right? And then this guy, oh, we're too many, we can't sort them through. And now, in answer to his last determination, do it by February the 7th. It looks like they asked for a further delay of just 1 month. So mark your calendars. These things need to be asked about. March 7th, let's see what the new FBI director, and it could be Kash Patel, who, by the way, knows where many of these bodies are buried, including, so to speak, Seth Rich's body, if he's allowed into office. Now, I hope that you don't get knocked off the air, Glenn, for me mentioning Seth Rich, but it's a real factor here. Nobody else does, and we'll see if by some stratagem, not only Tulsi Gabbard, but Kash Patel become confirmed as well as nominated. If that happens, then maybe these people with the briefcases and the sunglasses and the dark glasses and the suits will be a different breed, and maybe they'll be able to get the Justice Department and the FBI back abiding by the laws in this country, which people fought to defend and which our founders very clearly crafted with great care. And I'm thinking about the Fourth Amendment, especially. No, every citizen should be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures.
Yeah, no, I think all of this is extremely important because when Trump comes with his usual style with guns blazing, people tend to focus on his foreign policy. But I think a huge focus of his will be on the domestic sphere and the intelligence community, I think, is one of the main things he will want to sort out. Again, I keep thinking back in 2017 when Chuck Schumer, almost, yeah, he threatened President Trump, and he said, if you try to go after the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So this is a very strange threat to come with, suggesting or that the intelligence community are now acting independently, and if the president of the United States want to try to take them on and hold them accountable, then well, then he should be expected to be taken down. This is quite extraordinary. So I do think he's quite determined to address this issue before well they deal with him. But
No,
well,
you're Glenn, let me interrupt here. That was on January the 2nd, 2017. So, like our memo, it was in that interregnum period
oh
where
yeah,
Trump was president-elect, right? And what Chuck Schumer did was call Rachel Maddow. Okay, Rachel, you got to let me on tonight. I got something really important to tell you. And as you related, he said, I thought Trump was a pretty smart guy, but he's done something really, really foolish. Oh, what's that, Chuck? Says Rachel Maddow. Well, he's taken on the intelligence community. Okay. And they have 6 ways to Sunday to get back at you, like you said, Glenn. Okay. Now, did she say, Chuck, are you suggesting that the intelligence community could move against the president-elect or the president? No, she didn't say that. She said, oh my God. So now that was the 2nd of January. 4 days later, in the Oval Office, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and the fellow from NSA and the big national security types met with Obama, and the plan was this. We're going to show him the memorandum that we've compiled, which shows that the Russians interfered in the election. They hacked into the DNC. And so, Mr. Trump, you owe your election to the Russians, okay? And then they approved this, okay? Now, James Comey, you're going to be seeing the president with these other fellas. I'll tell you what, why don't you spring that dossier on him? The one that says that he was cavorting with prostitutes in a hotel room in Moscow. And I said, all right, we can do that. First, we'll tell him about the memo, by the intelligence community assessment, which was written by one intelligence community, the CIA, and waived by the FBI and NSA. Okay. Anyhow, so they go in there, Comey, Brennan, Clapper. Okay. And they say, Mr. President, we want you to know about this. I mean, Mr. President-elect, this thing has been compiled by these wonderful analysts, and it does show that the Russians helped you and actually helped you really in the election. But it's just been published today, the 6th of January. And so just so you know, and then James Comey says, no, I have something really sensitive to broach to the president-elect. Could the rest of you please leave? By previous agreement, they all leave. So now, Mr. President, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's scurrilous rumors going around, and it's going to be in the press today that you were cavorting in this hotel in Moscow with prostitutes who are said to have been urinating on you. And Trump looks at him and says, "What? Yeah, Mr. President, Mr. President-elect, I'm sorry about this, but it's going to be in the press, not only the intelligence community assessment showing that you were helped by the Russians to win the election, but now this, just so you know, Mr. President, just so you know. Now, Trump, real estate guy from New York City, he doesn't know how things in Washington work. So what did he do? He said, this is pretty tricky, but I'm going to win James Comey over onto my side. I'm going to invite him to dinner and lunch, and I'll get him to agree with me. All the while, Comey is subverting everything that Trump stands for. How would I have reacted if Comey took that approach to me? Just so you know, Ray, just so you know. I would have said, well, Mr. Comey, you are required now by my order, and I can make good on it on the 20th of January when I'm president, to go out and clean out your desk at the FBI and get out of there in 5 days, because if you're still around when I take office, you're going to be prosecuted. Do you understand that, Mr. Comey? Get out of here. I don't want to see you again. I mean, it's so crass what was going on there. But Trump did spend the next several months trying to get Comey on his side, and Comey is initiating investigations of Trump, enlisting the Five Eyes and everything. So it was so corrupt that Trump knows all this now. So does Radcliffe. So does Kash Patel. Will they still be able to prevail over these other guys with the with the briefcases, the dark glasses, and the stuff on people, blackmail stuff? I don't know, but the issue is joined now, and I'm grateful for a chance to air all this, Glenn, because it's very seldom that I get a chance to go into tail ends. I followed it very, very closely for over the last 10 years. And as you just pointed out, it's just as important as foreign relations with respect to Russia, because Trump was handcuffed. He couldn't do anything constructive with Russia, and he did very destructive things like getting out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which is coming back to haunt all of us now. I won't go into that, but he could repair this. He's in a position now where he's not going to have to run for another term. And so we'll see who wins. But the issue is joined. It's going to be a real Donnybrook. And as far as I know, Kash Patel has not been confirmed, or there's been no vote on the Judiciary Committee for whether he's sent forward as a nominee or not to the full Senate.
Yeah. Oh, well, I just want to say last that I agree with you. I think Trump is coming back now in the second administration a bit wiser in terms of yeah, who we can trust in the intelligence community. You know, not just a bit wiser, but he also comes this time with much stronger allies. I think last time he stood a lot on his own. Now he comes with Tulsi, Gabbard, and the rest. So big things could happen. And yeah, when this happens, well, new updates. We'll try to get you back on. So. Ray, I really appreciate your time and thank you so much for your insights and yeah, for also going into the details. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, Glenn, for inviting me.